G'day guys, how are we doing? Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Tuesday, February the 18th, 2025. And big day today because it's little Neil's his birthday. He's turning 8 years old today and he's currently just at the fence in front of me doing his business and eyeing off a bunch of kangaroos which are just in the field. They all tend to hang out in this field. We're just walking past at the moment and all looking at him like, what are you doing? But it is his birthday. He can do what he wants today. Come on, buddy. You've done enough today. The amount of stuff that comes out of his body, fair income. Anyway, I do clean it up, by the way, so don't panic. The boxing, enough of Neil's birthday, the boxing. As expected, this week it's all about the big fight or the big show, event, whatever, in Saudi Arabia. Benavides and Bivol, all the fights on the undercard, and every article you seem to open on the net at the moment are all about the big card. And again, the argument's been, is it the biggest card ever? I think it's the most stacked card I think I've seen. But again, I've covered this in other videos, not necessarily the best card, but definitely probably the most stacked card I've seen. There's 94 rounds of boxing. 7 12-rounders and a 10-rounder. I'm not quite sure why you would throw in the 10-rounder. Who was it? It was Bradley Ray was his name. I don't know. I can't even remember who the other guy was. But a 10-rounder just as a cherry on top. I don't understand it when you've got 7 12-round fights, all title fights, a couple of interim title fights in there, but a lot of actual world title fights. It's something you don't normally see. And I suppose on Talking Boxing last night, a little bit of a conversation about that as far as do we need the amount of fights that are on these cards, and it probably comes up a little bit on the weekend as well with Top Rank. They had a 7.5-hour show, I think it was. It's a little bit too long. A little bit too long. I know, again, I said last night, it's got to be careful what you wish for sometimes, but I just think that's too many fights. I think on the Riyadh card, I mean, it's awesome. I'm assuming they start really, really early. I'm not quite sure exactly what time of night in Saudi Arabia the shows or the main event sort of starts, but you would think that it'd be early afternoon. And I'm not sure what sort of relates to the time differences, in the States and the UK when they put it on. I'm assuming they just put it on at their normal time, and all the other countries just have to alter their broadcast schedules around it. I don't know, but for us, it's starting at 3 a.m. in the morning, and we'll probably go till well after lunchtime, I'm probably assuming. So it's a big, big day. What are you going to do? Are you going to get up early? Super early, I mean. 3 o'clock. Is 3 o'clock super early? Or are you just going to stay up? I know lots of people have said they're just going to stay up. Well, if that's the case, good luck to you, I suppose, but I won't be. I'm going to cheat and probably get up at about 6. I'm going to miss a couple of fights. I don't care. Yes, I know it's sacrilege, and I'm not a real boxing fan because I don't want to get up at 3 a.m. I'll watch the replay of the fights a little bit later. But I'm assuming the fights that will be on earlier will be Bawati and Smith, maybe Shakur and Schofield. The fights I really want to watch, of course, is the main event, but also Ortiz and Madrimov, Parker and Dubois. They're probably the big 3 that I really don't want to miss. And the others, yeah, okay, whether I see them or not, I'm not that stressed. I wouldn't mind seeing Adames and Hamza Shiraz. I think that'll be a good fight, but I'm not going to be stressed if I miss it and have to watch it later. So again, I know I'm a shocking boxing fan. The nerve I have to call myself a boxing fan, I get it. Someone will come at me with that, but hey, I don't care. I will watch all the fights just when I feel like it. Now, another thing I saw, talking boxing last night again, thank you to everyone that always tunes in. I'm pretty sure I've got it right this time where I haven't lost the show. Last week I mentioned that I accidentally deleted the show, so no one got to see it the next day or listen to it on Spotify. So again, apologies for that. I think I've got it, but lots of good things talked about. Again, most of it was about the fights this weekend, who's going to win. It was probably a 50-50 split on a lot of the fights, and that's probably what makes this such a great card. Surprisingly, most people going for Benavides. Well, probably not surprisingly, but most people going for Benavides in the main event. I would probably say it's a 60-40 split, but I mean, Bivol, in my opinion, won the first fight, so he's a massive chance to actually get it done this time. And maybe if he's a little bit more, I won't say aggressive, but maybe just a little bit more assertive, if that makes sense, and doesn't let the Benavides dictate and take that centre ring for pretty much the whole fight and sort of get the judges' attention. I don't know, but yeah, probably a 60-40 split. I'm still going to go with Benavides in the fight. I think if you normally win the first fight, you normally win the second fight. So that is there. Then on the undercard fights, a lot of people going for Joseph Parker, which really surprised me. I thought I was sort of going out on a limb and saying that Joseph Parker had a really, really good chance of beating Dubois, and I think will beat Dubois. Of course, there was a lot of people that said, well, Dubois is going to knock Parker out, and that's fine. But I was really surprised at how many people actually did back me up and say that Parker would win the fight. Most people going for Virgil Ortiz over Madrimov. That's going to be a ripper fight. For me, that's the second best fight on the card. I'm a big rap for Virgil Ortiz, and I was really impressed with Madrimov in his fight with Crawford. So, but again, most people going for Ortiz. Most people, again, going for Shiraz over Adames. A lot of people by stoppage. And Shakur Stevenson and Schofield. Look, that in itself, it's actually a really, really good fight. It's just been lost in the mix of all the other fights on the card. It's a bit of a shame. I'm still trying to get my head around why they would make this fight now. Surely Schofield's on the way up. He's a very, very good young fighter, and I respect him for going up and fighting Shakur Stevenson, but I'm just not sure why they would put that fight on this card. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for me that they would have Shakur Stevenson and Schofield on a Riyadh card. It just doesn't, I don't know, call it a gut feeling, it just doesn't seem to fit the mould of the fights they usually put on these cards. You would normally think if it was Stevenson, they'd match him with a Petter or someone like that, a tough, really tough sort of fighter, not a similar style fighter in Schofield that has the potential of really stinking the joint out. So, yeah, I'm sure they've got the reasons for it, but I know that when they normally match these fights up, they do it with the crowd spectacle in mind, and I just don't think they've done that with this fight. And the other fights on the card, well, as I said, I'm really not that stressed. If I'm up to see him, I'm up to see him. I probably actually will get up. I did say 6, or probably more like 5, because my son's got to go to work. He starts at 6, so my wife takes him to work. So the odds are that I will take the opportunity. I do wake up when the alarm goes off, so maybe I'll just use that as my alarm to get up and get amongst it. The other main thing last night, I think actually before I get to that, with the other topic, was curious that David Benavides has now said his next step, especially if Bivol wins against Benavides, because they'll fight the trilogy, that he's now targeting Zurdo Ramirez. And I know I've touched on this in an episode or two in the last few weeks, but now it looks like he's really starting to zone in on the Zurdo Ramirez fight. Now, this is the same guy who accused Canelo of avoiding him and fighting other fighters who weren't as good as him, just to pad his record. Why wouldn't that fighter in Benavides put his hand up and say, I want the best in the division is Jaya Pataya? Now, I'm not sure whether it's even arguable that most people think Jaya Pataya is the best cruiserweight in the world. I know most fans want to see the Zurdo Ramirez fight with Jai, but I would think that 90% or 95% of boxing fans would think that Jai is the legitimate champion. So if that is the case, why isn't our man David Benavides saying that I want the best Jai Pataya, and instead targeting Zurdo Ramirez? Now, I know if it's the all-Mexican fight they're after, that's fine, but it just seemed a little bit ironic to me, or hypocritical, whatever you might want to call it, that David Benavides has called Canelo out for so long and really got into him about not fighting the best available fighter in that division, which was David Benavides, instead targeting lesser fighters. Well, it's, as I said, it's a little bit hypocritical for me that Benavides has now said he wants to fight Ramirez and hasn't even mentioned Jai Pataya. If you want to test yourself and go up and win the real belt, well, maybe go up and fight Pataya and then say, then I want to fight for all the belts. Well, not the WBC belt, but 3 belts against my fellow Mexican, Zurdo Ramirez. So, interesting. What do you guys think about that? I just saw that. Thought, geez, you haven't even mentioned Jai Pataya. Can't get Canelo's name out of your mouth. That fight doesn't look like it's going to happen, and now you've got a chance to go up and fight for a cruiserweight belt, and you're targeting the second best in the division. Anyway, what do you guys think? Now, the other thing that was sort of heavily discussed last night was the legacies and resumes of fighters. Now, if D-Style, you're watching this, D-Style in America on his site, he started all this with his comparisons of Canelo and De La Hoya. He made the cardinal mistake of criticising Oscar De La Hoya's career, not his whole career, just his choices later in his career at 34, 35, which is where Canelo is at the moment. Canelo getting all the criticism, and De La Hoya pretty much being untouchable. Never really had a lot of criticism, did Oscar De La Hoya, and D-Style made that cardinal mistake of saying, well, how about this? He didn't fight him and he had a chance, so that got things rolling. But also last night got people talking about other resumes out there and who's got the better resume, probably in the last, I think, they did say about the last 25 years. I'm going to go right back to 35 years because I think the start of the 90s is probably where we had so many great fighters. But it was also, the reason I've gone back that far is because some great fighters sort of, I mean, if we went 25 years, what's that, 2000? A lot of fighters sort of crossed over that from the 90s into the 2000s. And to judge them properly, I think you would have to include the 90s or the early 90s. And look, my top five, I would think at number 5, I would have Evander Holyfield. Yes, Evander Holyfield. Now, a lot of people said, or a few people said, Lennox Lewis. But look, Lewis retired in 2003. But having said that, as I said, he had a 13-year stretch there. But look, he had arguably 2 wins over Holyfield, but he had the 1 plus the draw. A win over a very faded Mike Tyson. I know he had wins over Tony Tucker, Tyrell Biggs, Razor Ruddock to throw in there, but he also got wiped out twice by fighters Oliver McCall and Hasim Rahim. Now, not exactly Hall of Fame fighters, so I'm not quite sure that qualifies him as, that resume as far as his wins goes. Look, I always thought Lennox was a great fighter, but I never really shared the opinion that he was, that top 2 or 3 of all time. I'm not quite sure, but even just those 2 reasons alone, he got knocked out twice by not exactly great fighters in McCall and Rahim. I know he avenged both of those losses, but the fact that he got knocked out in the first place, I think Mike Tyson gets a fair crack at all people at him. And he actually lost to some pretty good fighters early in his career, not later in his career. So I probably ruled him out. But I went for Holyfield because, look, he unified the cruiserweight division, of course. And Carlos D'Leon, I remember, but he was a dominant cruiserweight then. So he beat him. He beat Dwight Muhammad Kawi at light heavyweight. He then, of course, went up to heavyweight. He beat the likes of Michael Dokes, Pinklon Thomas, Michael Mora, of course, Buster Douglas, Larry Holmes, George Foreman, just Mike Tyson, of course. When Mike Tyson was supposedly back, he was a current world champion. Holyfield took the WBA belt off him. So I would say that Evander Holyfield is number 5. Number 4, who did I think I had... I was trying to think who I did have at number 4. Was it Oscar? I think it was Oscar. Did I actually have a top 5? Maybe I only had a top 4. I can't remember. But definitely Oscar. We'll say he's at number 4. Hang on, I'm just trying to think who. No, number 3. I only had a top 4. Sorry, guys. I thought I had 5 for some reason, unless I've forgotten someone. But the argument was probably more so where Oscar sort of stood. I've got him at let's say he's number 3. Like some great fights over his career. Look, he lost 2 fights, one to Trinidad and one to Mosley, that were definitely questionable in my opinion. So apart from that, I think the first sort of Mosley fight, you would say that Mosley won that. But, he started off with that. I remember him fighting Jorge Paez and then went right through the divisions and wins over Pernell Whitaker, Hector Camacho, Julio Cesar Chavez, Ricardo Mayorga at 154. Just some great wins by the golden boy, Oscar De La Hoya. And then I had Manny Pacquiao, and we can just go through his resume. I mean, it's just too hard with all the Barrera, Morales, and, got me, buddy, De La Hoya, and Cotto, and Margarito, and You know, so many, Ricky Hatton, so many great fighters. Shane Mosey is another one to throw in there. So I would say Manny Pacquiao. And then number one for me is Floyd Mayweather. You just cannot, in my opinion, disparage his resume at all. And again, it's hard to go through all his opponents, but all the greats of his era, he fought. And I know he gets a lot of criticism about when he fought them, but at the end of the day, he still fought them and beat them. You know, Canelo and Pacquiao and De La Hoya and Cotto, and I mean, it just goes on and on and on with Floyd Mayweather. And like him or not, he retired with a 50-0 record. I know the 50th fight is questionable, but look, either way, we laud Rocky Marciano for a 49-0 record. If you take out the McGregor fight, he still had a 49-0 record himself. But I would say that his resume, again, I always seem to lay the boots in the Rocky, but Rocky Marciano had nothing on the resume of Floyd Mayweather Jr. and gets all the pats on the back. So I think we've got to acknowledge Floyd Mayweather. Now, I don't know why. I'm pretty sure I had a fifth fighter. Who? Look, Alexander Usyk's probably one you could throw in. Oh, sorry, Canelo Alvarez was in there as well. What am I thinking, Lyndon? I knew I had five. I would have Canelo after De La Hoya and ahead of Holyfield. So the top five, I would have Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Oscar De La Hoya, come here, buddy, Canelo Alvarez, and then Evander Holyfield. They're, in my opinion, the best resumes of the last 35 years. So what do you think? It's always a matter of debate. And look, it's good that we have these conversations because everyone's got their own opinion. I'm sure that everyone, or a lot of people, disagree with my assessment here, but that's the way I see it. I think the last 35 years, Mayweather, Pacquiao, De La Hoya, Canelo, and Evander Holyfield. I was just about to say Alexander Usyk might have been one as well. I mean, unified the cruiserweight division, but I had a good look at his record. Yes, he beat Breedis and Tony Bellew, and then he's obviously beaten Dubois, Fury twice and Joshua twice, but he's only had 23 fights. It's really hard to judge someone that's had 23 fights. And I, for some reason, thought he'd had more than that, but he's only had 23 fights in a long time as a pro. Was it 12 years, whatever it's been? So not a great average as far as the amount of fights he's had, but definitely the best heavyweight of probably the last 15 years, maybe. I'll put him ahead of the Klitschko's and obviously Fury and those types of guys, but that's another point to argue as well. So what do you think? Again, put it in the chat below. I'm sure everyone will let me know. I'm going to do a poll this week too, guys, of all the fights on the card of the Riyadh season event. And we'll get a bit of an idea. I'll probably do my last preview of the card, and I'll bring up the results of who's going to win, and we'll discuss that as well. So guys, have a great Tuesday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.